very pleased to have Mark Girouard here, longtime Keiretsu member and mentor for me in terms of valuation and deal structures. He's a co-founder, CEO of Stage Right Ventures, an active angel investor and valuation professional here, who's certainly seen his share of cap tables and broken cap tables, and has always got a great set of questions. So, Mark, without further ado, I'll go ahead and turn things over to you to walk us through your thoughts on cap tables and how they impact for angel investors, for entrepreneurs. What should we be thinking about?
Great, thanks, Nathan. Let's see here. Should I do my share screen?
Yep, go ahead and hit the share screen there at the bottom, and we'll get that popped up so you can walk us through.
Let's see here.
And welcome, Mac. Welcome, Matt. Welcome, Carmen. Welcome, Royal. Ivan, welcome back. Great to have Ivan on again. Welcome, Guy. Welcome, Leaf. We're in due diligence with Leaf now on Retrolux on his deal structure and other items. So welcome. Great to have you guys on.
All right, can you see that? Is that good?
Yeah, looks great, Mark. I
Okay.
like the logo too. Nice.
Like the logo, yeah. Thanks for the introduction and nice to see everyone. And I look at my screen here, so we'll go back and forth. And yeah, my name is Mark Girouard. Oops, let's see here. There. My name is Mark Girouard, and I am the CEO founder of Stage Right Ventures, and we came along to really help people build custom design exit transactions for companies in the lower to middle market segments. Sean McCarthy helps me on the technology side. He may be on the call or might pop on later, either today or tomorrow. And we have a good group of team and partners we work with that if we need to bring in people on a deal or on some of the backroom stuff that we need to do. So a little bit more, we do advisory work, technology work, investment work. I've been around, like Nathan said, a lot of this stuff for a long time, and lots of different ways I look at and approach this stuff. So I think that's what kind of prompted this. And I have a lot on the valuation side, do a lot of valuation work on the advisory side, and technology, we do project-based development work. So just a little bit, just intro who I am. So today, I think we're going to walk through, and I think, Nathan, do I have like 25 minutes or something like that? And then we do 10 minutes for questions, right?
Yeah, it's about right. If we can do 15 to 20 minutes and then take some questions to wrap up, that'll be great.
Okay, great. So yeah, just trying to get an idea. So I'll walk us through the basics, how it works, and then some key terms, a little bit on legal and compliance. And then I'm calling it ownership 2.0. So how do we look at patterns in dilution, and then and maybe some samples. So if anywhere along the line you need me to sort of speed up at the end or something like that, and then we can talk and get into some more questions, because the samples would be a good time to maybe have some interaction on that. So anyway, the first thing that comes to mind when I think of dilution and cap tables is this. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was on vacation, and I did something I don't do, which is I looked at my email on my cell phone, and I'm sitting there, and Claire sends me an email. Do you want to speak on cap tables and dilution? And I look up and I see, this is what I'm looking at. And I say, gosh, this is what I want my capitalization tables and dilution to look like. Just like this. So pretty, so peaceful. But yet, it usually never goes like that. And I'm walking down, so I walk down the beach, and then this is what I see. And this is really more what it's like. There's rocks, the beach, you go to the sharks, there could be sharks, there's a body of water, there's a mountain. How many mountains are there? That's really more what it's like. And like I said here, note the mountains and ocean may not be the scale. So we don't know what we're going to run into, and we really want to plan, and we want to try to get to this, but we're really looking at this a lot of times. And as you see, it gets kind of complex. And so it's hard to get through like 15 minutes and sort of make an expert on this, but I can give you an idea of sort of things to look at and what I kind of look at. So to cross the ocean, brave the sharks, climb the mountain, how do we get there? So we start with the balance sheet. where we are now, then to the capitalization table. Pre and post money creates this capitalization. Dilution may occur as a result of any new capital or valuation. And finally, this results in total ownership claims at a given point in time from all prior and current raised capital. So next is the balance sheet. And I think it's important to start, this is where I start with anything financial, is I'm like, well, what does this impact? So the balance sheet is the financial foundation to understanding this. It's when we issue equity, we get cash to issue equity. So these are the really areas. And it's very important to look at convertible securities, say like a convertible note, is maybe sitting here on the balance sheet under long-term debt. And then when we convert it into equity, it also impacts that. So I'm really focused on this presentation on, say, equity, but convertible notes play an important part in this. And they all change the capital structure of the company. So going further, if we were to look further into the equity entry on the balance sheet, this number should summarize into the total capital amounts raised by all previous rounds. As you can see here, and this is something that you would probably see in a Keiretsu table when you start to dive into a company, which shows really the company valuation, which is your pre-money valuation, any new equity that's issued, and then what's the post-money valuation. And then it's done per share and number of shares issued. And this is done almost from the perspective of you have of the first round. So you can see here the founder has not put in any money and has issued common shares, and the investors are now issued preferred shares. And you can see here that this is already begins where dilution occurs, which is if it would just be these capital providers put in this 3.5 million, they would own 100% of the company. But instead, they valued the company at $1 million, and the owner did not put in any, the founder did not put in any. And so now the new equity only owns 77.8%. So that kind of gives you where this all starts from. And it seems so simple, but as you have successive rounds, it starts to get quite complex. Okay, so a company's pre-money value or valuation is the value of the company before the new cash is contributed. It is the price per share paid by investors in the financing and the number of shares in the company's capitalization before the financing. So something I'm asked all the time, and it seems to come up quite a lot in Keiretsu meetings, is what's a good method, the current method for determining pre-money value. And I'm going to just read this. On each full moon that falls on the 29th day of February, a night rainbow will appear somewhere near Keiretsu's corporate office and guide those who know to look for it toward an ethereal portal flanked by golden unicorns wearing VR headsets. Those who pass through the portal may briefly gaze upon a book bound in banana leaves and shimmering in the moonlight, which lays out instructions for arriving at a pre-money valuation for a pre-revenue company. Now, there are better methods for determining the pre-money value. And what I recommend is you calculate that value based on acceptable methods using the current and expected economic benefit divided by the risk of the cash flows generated by the company. And it gives you a value that can be negotiated between buyers and sellers. And that's really what it is, because it's such a powerful number and everything is really driven from this number. That's where dilution occurs, and it has a huge impact on determining what percentage a company owns and what percentage the shareholders own and what percentage the existing stockholders own. So pre-money value is really where it starts. Then you have the post-money value, is the value the company has after the financing event. So it's the sum of the pre-money value and the expected proceeds from the financing. And it's important that parties think carefully about what they mean when they're using these terms, what these terms represent, and how the terms may support a given number. So the pre and post money value are used throughout this process, and they compound on each other in other additional rounds. So example, I have a few examples here. Big VC is going to invest $2 million in Medco based on an $8 million pre-money valuation. After the investment, Big VC owns 20% of Medco. So that is 20%, that $2 million is 20% of the company. And it results in a $10 million post-money value. But say in the second example, they that's a $7 million pre-money valuation. After the investment, they own 22%. So it changes this percentage, and that's why you'll hear a lot in Keiretsu meetings why people will argue, and it's like, oh, your valuation is really high, or why is your valuation this way? And I look at this very deeply because of what I do and for a living, and I look at why is that generated? Why is that number? And so anyway, the post-money value is kind of a moot point. Once everything's defined from pre-money and a new capital, it's sort of just a calculation. So some standards for raising capital, and this includes the balance sheet as it relates to shares outstanding as converted capitalization and fully diluted capitalization. So you have to calculate the pre and post money at each capital raise. You have to have clear shareholder agreements, factoring in the prior shareholder agreements. You need to communicate changes in advance to prior owners of the company. You need to know the impact of down rounds. So down rounds are when the prior valuation that was set is now lower with the next round of capital. And then you have to set reasonable valuations based on reasonable assumptions. Not Series A companies are worth X million these days. You'll hear that a lot. People think, oh, I like Series A companies to be 3 million. I like Series B companies to be 7 million. That means nothing. You have to understand why the business is operating as it is and why it needs to command that valuation. And you have to, what I touched on earlier, is you have to calculate the impact for converted securities such as convertible notes, warrants, and options, because that also impacts ownership. So let's keep going here. Series A to Z, a lot of, there are many ways to illustrate the information on a cap table that was raised. And my favorite is the super secret round called Preferred Series C-2B Convertible at Exit. This is confusing at best. In general, rounds go up in alphabet numbers, but not necessarily. Each round of equity has a name. Series Z is not better than Series A. Convertible securities impact that, as I talked about. And so, but you have to be careful about companies that put off this raising until an unknown date in the future, and they just continue to issue convertible securities without ever pricing anything. You also got to look at the company's financing history. And like I said, beware of Series C-1B, C-2B, C-3B masquerading as a new round of capital with the same pricing. This is a tactic to avoid valuing the company at standard Series B, C, D, E, and F, and leads to excessive raising of that capital. So hopefully I'm not just zooming too fast through this. If anybody wants to stop me at any point, let me know. We'll have a lot. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions once we get to the examples. So I pulled a lot of Keiretsu examples. Dilution, as I said, is the decrease in ownership as additional shares are issued, including changes in the capitalization and the valuation of the company. So the valuation of the company is changing, and then the issuing of new shares is also changing that. So, so both those things sort of work to create dilution, and share dilution is when the company issues the stock, reducing the ownership proportion of a current shareholder, like you saw in that example. So instead of 20%, it's 22%. That was due to valuation, but at each round that occurs. And so what are you owning? It really becomes the question. Dilution may happen in a current round, a future round, and dilution from prior rounds may affect any future shareholder agreement. So it's very important to look at, and that's why I have a few slides on legal. So you really want to see how this impacts to everything. And if you're writing new agreements, you need to take into account your prior agreements. So it changes over time, dilution. It's an issue that occurs, but the key is it growing faster? And I'll talk about that in a second. Is it growing? Is your dilution, what's the rate of your dilution? Okay, so legal and compliance. This applies to state and federal security laws and the primary areas of compliance. However, there are others that to be aware of that are implicitly or explicitly created through capitalization. Investor rights, which Keiretsu has a bunch in the back of the appendix of the due diligence handbook, which is liquidation preference, dilution rights, dividend rights, protected voting rights, board representation, redemption rights, preemptive purchase rights, rights of first refusal, co-sale rights, drag-along rights, pay-to-play provisions. I mean, it's a lot of a lot of rights come along with this as each stage in capitalization is created. But it's also important to realize other things that are happening too. So when debt is issued or equity is issued in a bankruptcy, debt holders take preference over equity holders, and convertible note holders may also have different rights than your equity holders. And then there's such a thing as the 409A valuation, which came about for IRS tax reporting after the internet bubble burst, because a lot of companies, when you have a complex capital structure, you need to value the shares, not just based on this pre-money value, you need an independent third party to assess those shares. Okay, so here I have a couple of funny things here. Listen to it, basic legal and compliance standards. Listen to your investors first. You're an investor if you're an owner and need to think like an investor. It is your lawyer's and accountant's job to help you stay compliant, and your job to manage the balance sheet and company performance for investor benefit. Remember that lawyers love to write new capitalization documents. More documents equal more fees. Intelligent investors are curious to write new capitalization documents as it impacts their ownership, dilution, plus more fees don't necessarily benefit owners. And as I said, you got to watch these shareholder agreements that may change prior agreements. So raising capital impacts the future ownership claims on that company. And that's why these things are the key to it. Okay, now this is the fun, we're going to start getting into the fun part, which if that wasn't fun already, is I look at the patterns of these things. So I remember, Brianna would be sitting next to me and she's like, well, how did you see that? And I look at the patterns that these tables present, and that's why I have some samples here. And one thing that I look at is, like, beyond the mechanism that sets up the capitalization, it's important to understand the patterns of these things over time and the different people grouped on these balance sheets. So on these cap tables. And I say, is it a party, a library, a funeral, or a ghost town? Who has an ownership claim on this company? Is this real or imagined? So the patterns, and I'm just putting them into kind of groups, like friends. Are friends and family on there? Are you on the inside of that friend or friends and family, or outside? Is this a country club? Let's meet and play golf every Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and we take Saturday off because we might think about running the company. Is this a war where there's army, sharpshooters, there's infantry, or there's sharks? Let's eat this thing alive before it ends. Or fraud, which is never very fun, where there's former jail cell inmates on the cap table. Let's clean up the past. And my personal favorite, the ne'er-do-wells. And in case we need a definition, a ne'er-do-well is a person without a means of support, an idle, worthless person, a loafer, a person who is ineffectual, unsuccessful, and completely lacking in merit, a good for nothing. If you have too many ne'er-do-wells on a cap table, it will get very dangerous for you as an investor, because no one will be running that company, and it could then turn into a zombie company. Let's see here. So that's kind of a thing. And I will start to pick apart these samples. But one last thing is, you really want to make sure you're understanding how fast is your dilution growing and how fast is your value growing. So if your pie, and I'm calling the pie in its relationship to value, the pie grows quicker than the dilution, whose ownership is growing as a result, and how fast is the pie growing? So when your value is growing and dilution is growing at a lower rate, then it's sort of everybody's winning because the company's improving. And but if dilution grows quicker than the pie, that's quite bad. Dilution grows for the investor or the owner, and sometimes people, and that's where you get those patterns, which is different people sort of fighting for control over the balance sheet. And the pie may be eaten up soon. Dilution grows quickly and the pie is all gone. This happens, and this is what can happen in sort of shareholder lawsuits. There is nothing left for the investors or owner to own, and people are trying to sort of carve up what's left. And then, like I said, the zombie company, the Walking Dead, which is kind of a nightmare, where the company neither dies nor is really growing. And let's see here, the samples. So Nathan, I'll probably ask you, I have like 6 samples here, and I could go through them faster. I don't know how we are in time, but I'll go through and then kind of summarize what I kind of see. What are we gonna say?
Yeah, we're good. We got about 7-8 minutes. So
okay. Good. Yeah, I just didn't know how fast. So yeah, I'll go quickly through these and then kind of some thoughts on kind of where this is all heading, right? So the little disclaimer here, these are meant to inform and result in much better transactions for investors, which includes founders. For any confidential information, we apologize that you're out raising capital and putting yourself out there for criticism. So that's one little caveat. As far as invest, like this one, and these are taken directly from some meetings I went to at Keiretsu. Now this one is, you see, and this has, and I also want to point out, this has nothing to do with the industry of the company it does have a lot to do with the performance of the company, but I'm looking at this with almost independently of that, and I'm seeing what has happened independently of that and what is happening within that company. So in this case, this company has raised, they've been around 5 years. They have raised so many different kinds of rounds. There's a seed round, a note round, an equity round, a note round, a safe round, a bridge round. I mean, I'm running out of breath. There's angels, all kinds of different sources. And then they've raised capital, but they've also, it looks like they're raising notes and kind of holding on to their equity. It looks like to me, they're still owning this seed round and the equity round, which was angels put in 1.4 million and they own 40% of the company. And so this is it. Are you growing? They've only really have to value at these rounds. They don't have to value at these convertible note rounds. So that's why there's no pre-money value listed. So that's kind of kicks it off. You'll see there's sort of various things that you'll see in these, but that's the thing that sort of jumps out at me on this one. And yet more samples. This one, I mean, this is all that's given to the investor. Pre-money valuation of 3.3 million. They're asking 0.1 million. They're allocating 0.9 million to Keiretsu. The founders have only put in $125,000, and yet they now created a post-money valuation from the prior round of 1.54 million. So what they're hoping to do is get in $1 million and potentially pay back themselves for something that you don't even know what it's really worth. And so many questions, like I say here, many questions arise regarding the ownership allocation to investors. Like why, that doesn't seem to make much sense to me. Like why would you have only put in that amount of money and you're worth this? Is it really, really worth this? Who came up with the $3.3 million? That's what I see with this one. Here's another one. These people really like to name theirs, like I said, the round 1, round 1.1, round A, round B, round 2, round B. There's 2 B rounds. There's so many rounds of capital here, I think. And then this is what's also confusing is this group as equity, they're raising equity and a convertible note. So it's really strange. Why would they do that? They've also had some down rounds here. You can see here the post-money value was down round between round A and B. And then why did round B go up in rounds? It doesn't seem, again, I think the owners are trying to hang on to 30% of the company and they haven't put any money into the company. So that to me is a pretty big red flag. This one, here's another sample. This one is pre-money value of 4.6 million and asking investment range of 2 million. So let's see here. This is, I don't even know where to start. This one, it doesn't make any sense. 43% equity post money, 2 million voting shares. This is more the terms. It's like you can't even add it up. And so I don't really even know what they're trying to accomplish here, but this places a burden on the investor. That's what I also want to point out. The burden doesn't need to be on the investor, but in this case, the burden is on the investor to determine what is really happening with this company and why you would want to put money into it. Just a few more samples. This one's a lot of convertible notes, and there's no priced equity round. So I kind of keep thinking, why are they putting off raising equity? Why there's so many convertible notes and they raise? So that will happen a lot because They will continue to raise money whatever the market will bear, but not a great long-term strategy. So they don't want to put a line in the sand. Yeah, so you can kind of see that one. And then the final one, which is, this is one you'll see quite a lot, and kind of part of all the other ones we looked at, is this group has raised, these are all pre-seed money from, I'd say, friends and family, amounting to about 332,000. And this is what happens when friends and family want money from others, but no ownership for that capital. So by this valuation round at the pre-money value of 14.5 million, that 332,000 will be worth 43.67 times their money, with no end in sight. So they probably want to pay all these early people that were their friends, and they even had a little safe note here, is they want to probably pay them back, and they don't really have an incentive beyond this. So I don't find this as properly incentivized. So the end game, the fundamental decision for an investor is knowing if it is better to own a bigger part of a smaller pie or a smaller part of a bigger pie. And sharks in the water may be part of the game. Here are the key components to help you cross the water, climb the mountain, and end the game. Clear valuation milestones, clear capitalization that matches that milestone. Current valuation is reasonable. The rate of growth of the pie is reasonable. The growth of dilution does not exceed the growth of the pie. And knowing when the valuations will end, when will there be a transaction? And so there's just a lot of things to pay attention to. It's a lot to get through in a short time because there's so much to dive into. And then that's what I say here is like, are we there yet? And it's like, which is my before and after? I mean, what I want is the after. I want peace and feeling like I put my money into this and it's calm and you know, how large is the body of water? Are there sharks? How many mountains are there? Do we like mountains? Can this be simple and peaceful? And I think it can if we've thought through all the parties, but I think that oftentimes one party is sort of thinking through it and they're sort of letting the other one make up as they go along. And that's it. I'm open for questions and whatever anybody would like to comments, questions, solutions, complaints.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mark.